Elizabeth II Charles, Prince of Wales Nicola Sturgeon John Swinney Kate Forbes Ken McIntosh Boris Johnson Rishi Sunak. Alistair Jack the First Minister of Scotland as the leader of the Scottish Government and keeper of the Great Seal of Scotland. The First Minister chairs the Scottish Cabinet and is primarily responsible for the formulation, development and presentation of Scottish government policy. Additional functions of the First Minister include promoting and representing Scotland in an official capacity. At home and abroad, the First Minister is nominated by the Scottish Parliament from among its members and is formally appointed by the monarch. Members of the Scottish Cabinet and junior ministers of the Scottish Government as well as the Scottish law officers are appointed by the First Minister. As head of the Scottish Government, the First Minister is directly accountable to the Scottish Parliament for their actions and the actions of the wider government. Nicola Sturgeon of the Scottish National Party is the current First Minister of Scotland. She assumed office on the 20th of November 2014, becoming the first female to hold the position of office, following the referendum in 1997, in which the Scottish electorate gave their consent. The Scottish Parliament and Scottish Executive was established by the Parliament of the United Kingdom and the Labour government of the Prime Minister, Tony Blair. The former Parliament of Scotland had been suspended following the Acts of Union 1707, forming the Parliament of Great Britain. The re-establishment of a dedicated legislature and executive for Scotland was known as devolution, and initiated a measure of home rule or self-governance in its domestic affairs, such as health, education and justice. The devolution movement came to a head in the 1970s, and resulted in a Royal Commission on the Constitution, leading to the Scotland Act 1978. This would have established an autonomous Scottish executive with a leader termed First Secretary, a post for which Strathclyde political leader Geoff Shaw was widely expected to be chosen. Though Shaw's premature death and a failure in a follow-up referendum led to the Act not being implemented, and a 20-year wait for the Scotland Act 1998. Scottish devolution resulted in administrative and legislative changes to the way Scotland was governed, and resulted in the establishment of a post of First Minister to be head of the devolved Scottish Government. The term First Minister is analogous to the use of Premier to denote the heads of government in subnational entities of Commonwealth nations, such as the provinces of Canada, the states of Australia, and the provinces of South Africa. Prior to devolution, the comparable functions of the First Minister were exercised by the Secretary of State for Scotland, whose Scottish office was a department of the British government set up in 1885. The Secretary of State is a member of the British Cabinet appointed by the Prime Minister to have responsibility for the domestic affairs of Scotland. Since 1999, the Secretary of State for Scotland has a much reduced role at the renamed Scotland Office as a result of the transfer of responsibilities to the Scottish Parliament and Scottish Government. The First Minister is nominated by the Scottish Parliament from among its members at the beginning of each term, by means of an exhaustive ballot. He or she is then formally appointed by the monarch. In theory, any member of the Scottish Parliament can be nominated for First Minister. However, the government must maintain the confidence of the Scottish Parliament in order to gain supply and remain in office. For this reason, the First Minister is almost always the leader of the largest party, or the leader of the senior partner in any majority coalition. There is no term of office for a First Minister. He or she holds office at Her Majesty's pleasure. In practice, however, a First Minister cannot remain in office against the will of the Scottish Parliament. Indeed, the Scotland Act explicitly requires the First Minister to either resign or seek a parliamentary dissolution if his or her government no longer enjoys the confidence of the Parliament. Whenever the office of First Minister falls vacant, the Sovereign is responsible for appointing the new incumbent upon nomination by the Scottish Parliament. The appointment is formalised at a meeting between the Sovereign and the First Minister designate. Given the additional member system used to elect its members, it is difficult for a single party to gain an overall majority of seats in the Scottish Parliament. When the Westminster Labour government devolved powers to Scotland, the SNP gained an overall majority of seats in the 2011 election, and thus had enough numbers to vote in its leader, Alex Salmond, as First Minister for a second term. After the election of the Scottish Parliament, a First Minister must be nominated within a period of 28 days.